listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, make sure you check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Range Minded Podcast. There you can get photos, videos, and all the articles that we talk about throughout all of our episodes. Speaking of episodes, this is episode 54, where we talk about how you can actually and legally make your own firearms. Obviously, there are pros and cons to building your own and some rules and regulations that you need to follow if you don't want to visit from the ATF, so we do our best to go over it all for you. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we are not experts and we're not lawyers, so make sure you do your own research as well if you're going to undertake any sort of firearms manufacture. With that out of the way, thanks for listening to Range Minded, and we hope you enjoy episode 54, The Ways That You Can Make Your Own Firearms. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and I am joined by...
the ever-popular Steve Zimmerman.
Not Genghis Khan, as you have put in here. When we record this, Steve puts his own little username in there, and he changes every single time.
I figured if I can't do dad jokes, then I can at least be entertained by small things.
There you go. It's the little things in life anyway, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so today we are talking about homemade firearms.
Yes.
Because believe it or not, you can make your own firearms at home as long as you are following some rules or some laws, I guess, and you're not a prohibited person.
Yeah, the ATF has some guidelines. We'll talk about that. It's actually nice. It's only like, one paragraph, a small paragraph.
It's good. You have to follow some common sense, I guess.
Yeah, it should be common sense, but I'm not one of them. I'm going to say, but there may be people that are pushing that envelope a little too far out there, which I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, everybody knows there's probably somebody out there making stuff in their backyard and not following the law.
Sure, or in the middle of nowhere. But there are some people pushing the envelope too that are very much in the public eye, and we'll talk about that too.
Yeah. Somebody that may be going to prison, huh?
Yeah, we'll see about that. So, but anyway, first we should stick to what we said we were going to do and cover some current events.
Yeah, throw some current events down. Wiki.
Yeah, so we've got the New Zealand gun ban got signed into, the assault weapons ban officially got signed into New Zealand law yesterday. We're recording this on a Thursday, and it got signed into law on a Wednesday. So,
and only one person voted it against it.
Yeah, it was like 240 to 1, I think.
That is super disappointing.
Yeah, a little crazy there. I guess it bans most semi-automatic firearms, parts that convert firearms into semi-automatic weapons.
All semi-automatic firearms.
Oh, really?
I think that's what it states, was everything, which is interesting because they have a pretty good hunting community. Like, there's a lot of people that go over there and hunt, their big game. And so it's going to interfere with their international visitors, I think, a little bit.
Well, and like Super Big Deal Sarah has been to New Zealand even and has hunted out there. So,
yes, I
mean, that shows how big of a deal, she is, first of all, but also how, rich that hunting community and.
Well, and they have feral hogs over there, kind of like they do have, south here in the States. But
right,
they have a necessity that, just got infringed pretty deeply. But it's not a right; it's a privilege.
Yeah, it's not written into their constitution. So,
and I think it's something important to share, though, is for as fast as the action was taken, I would say that they had all this stuff ready to go whenever they needed, whenever they saw the need.
You think so?
Absolutely. And I would say that stuff is ready to go here too at a moment's notice.
There might be. I think the other thing, though, that might have happened in New Zealand is that it was just it just rocked them so hard that, maybe the powers that be didn't, but maybe they talked to some people who were already in favor of gun control and had that ready to go. But
yeah, there's the anti-gun groups are so noisy. I'm pretty sure there's legislation waiting in the wings whenever they see the need to bring it up.
That's entirely possible. It wouldn't surprise me, unfortunately. But what?
I says, but
yeah. So They apparently expect a lot of weapons to be bought back because it is a buyback. It's not a confiscation, but it's
a mandatory buyback. Is
right.
What I understood. So there's a buyback denotes like, oh hey, I could make a couple extra bucks. No, we're going to give you some money first, which is probably not even going to be fair market value, and then we're going to come take them.
Yep, and they've got until September 30th to surrender your items, which I think is a pretty long grace period. I'm surprised. Normally, I would imagine it would have been like 30 days.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little extra violence that happens between now and then as well.
Really?
Between frustrated citizens or somebody just wanting to stir the pot. I wouldn't be surprised.
Motorcycle clubs?
Yeah, like I was telling you off air that I read a headline. I didn't read the story about they have big bike gangs over there. I don't know if people believe that or not, but they have a group called the Mongrels, which are like the Hells Angels, only Polynesians that have shorter tempers, and they're pretty vicious, and they're not giving up their guns.
Yeah, I don't think and if some of them are criminals, they probably aren't even supposed to have guns in the first place.
What a coincidence.
How about that? So, but yeah, they've got till September 30th, and apparently more than 300 weapons have already been handed in, but that is out of the 1.2 to 1.5 million firearms in New Zealand, and that the record of licenses show 13,500 firearms are military-style semi-automatics.
That's so disappointing. I remember right after I was looking, because I'm a member of some of the pages in Australia because of Australian Chris.
Right.
So I followed some of those Facebook pages, and there's a fellow down there that has some amazing military collectibles that are legal, 100%. Well, that were legal at the time of his purchasing, and he has a whole bunch of weapons that, I hate that term weapons, a whole bunch of military firearms that are either going to have to get destroyed or something's going to have to figure out.
He was sad, man.
Basically a museum is what it was, and then now he's got to get rid of them all.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe you can start a museum or something like that for education, and then that'd be the only way to keep them.
I don't know. When I was again on Facebook, everything's true, right? Yeah. But I think it was in Queensland or New South Wales in Australia, mm-hmm. they were pulling some of the real guns out of the military museums and replacing them with plastic replicas because they were scary.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty surprising to me.
That's pretty sad.
Although I guess 9 out of 10 people probably wouldn't notice the difference.
Yeah.
Although I guess too, I read that there are things you can do, perhaps to keep your guns, but keep them legal in New Zealand. Like I guess there's a bolt action conversion kit for an AR-15.
Well, that's ridiculous.
So, but hey, at least you wouldn't have to get rid of it,
Yeah.
But there's also, magazine capacity in effect now and everything. And it says the gun buybacks that cost the government between 102 million New Zealand dollars. But the cost could be higher depending on how many guns are handed to the police. But I mean, we talked about a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or two when, there were like a handful of guns, I think.
Yeah, they were very few. Yeah.
Well, and you look at the bump stock thing now here, and it's like, did anybody hand in their bump stocks?
Yeah. Actually, then I was just reading a report, a quick blurb. Man, we're going to go all over the place with this.
Yeah, we sure are.
One of the manufacturers of bump stocks is suing the federal government over financial loss, which I hope they win that court case because they were forced to destroy however, hundreds of thousands or millions of units that cost them a bunch of money, and they're not being compensated for that. So it falls under the Fourth Amendment. So hopefully they win their case at least.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one to follow for sure, because it would also probably set an interesting precedent.
Yeah. I don't know. Craziness.
Yeah, a little craziness, more craziness. The Transportation Security Administration apparently are finding more and more firearms in bags every year. And I'm not talking checked bags. I'm talking actual carry-on bags.
Why not?
Because you know how easy it is to forget you have a gun in your carry-on bag.
Every day. Happens to me every day.
I know, right? I guess the top the top offending airport is
Chicago.
no, Atlanta, believe it or not.
Well, that's like the biggest airport in the country, so that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the busiest airport in the country, and then at the bottom of the list is Nashville.
Wow. Then rednecks aren't taking guns to the airports, huh?
I guess not. But there's probably plenty of folks, rednecks in the Atlanta area, so maybe it evens out.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I guess
maybe they're flying back to Nashville and their guns get taken away in Atlanta.
I guess the most common excuse they get is that they forgot it was in their bag, which is kind of scary if you don't realize where like all your firearms are at all times.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, I guess I can kind of see like if you carry all the time, then it gets to be a part of you, and you kind of think, oh yeah, I have a gun on me. Which you're right, should not be the case. You should always know exactly where your firearms are at all time. But I can see where there's a stupid level of complacency taking place.
Yeah, because we've talked about that with people who carry every day, whether it's part of their job or just as a citizen or whatever. And, you never want to get to that level of complacency. No, but the reason I wanted to bring it up. Yeah, exactly. And the reason I wanted to bring it up was that we did an episode on how to fly with a firearm. And because there is a way to do it.
Apparently, millions of people didn't hear that episode.
Yeah, it's not getting the coverage that we hoped for, so we might have to re-release it there. But it's totally possible to fly with a firearm. You just have to know that the state laws that you're flying into,
and some specific airlines have specific rules too that they ask you to follow as well.
Right, but the long and short of it is that it goes into the check bag, and it has to be in a hard case, separate from ammunition. Supposedly, jury's kind of out on that one. I guess I remember Ricky said it depended on the airport.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you're curious about flying with a firearm, find that podcast episode. I don't remember what number it was. It was almost a year ago. Actually, it was dang close to a year ago because it was NRA show, wasn't it?
It was NRA show, yeah, and it was it was maybe episode 7, 8, 9, something like that. Is way back there. You know what? I might re-release it just for yucks.
Yeah, why not?
Because I don't think some of the first episodes we have are kind of scattered about. So if you've tried to go back into the library,
I've noticed that. Like you jump on iTunes and it's like they're everywhere.
Yeah, we're sorry about that. It's just the way that when we had to change over to a different hosting platform, it all kind of ended up that way.
It got screwed up.
But hey, maybe we'll re-release it or make some greatest hits or the first 10 or something, re-release those, and then you can listen to them in all their glory.
Yes.
So, but you can get arrested for carrying a firearm through TSA if you get caught for it. You can get arrested, you can get fined up to $13,000, but I guess it's a case-by-case basis. And best case scenario, you lose your gun. So
I know of a rep that he knew he had the gun, but he accidentally put it in his carry-on instead of checked, and it was a long afternoon for him.
Did he miss his flight?
Yes.
Yeah,
but they got it all figured out. They were pretty cool about it. Like that once they figure out who he was and he showed them his FFL and all that stuff, then they understood. They were a little more forgiving, but they were not impressed.
Yeah, he probably had a pretty tough afternoon, like he said, at best. Yeah. So let's see what else. In good news, we have this is from the Daily Signal. It just got dropped a couple days ago. But they were talking about that. We've talked about it before, the amount of defensive gun uses in America every year.
Yes.
And they were just trying to contradict or bust the myths of, some people say that there is no such thing as a good guy with a gun, and that people don't, use guns in self-defense and they don't save lives.
Yeah, shame.
But we've talked about the CDC report from 2013 that concluded that there were between 500,000 and 3 million defensive gun uses every year.
Yeah,
we talked about that a while ago.
And it's a staggering number. Like if you figure it out by day, that's up to 3,000 defensive gun uses a day.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Now that doesn't mean 3,000 shootings a day. That could be simply saying, "Hey, I have a firearm," or get, clearing leather and not pulling the trigger.
Right,
But
a brandishing of some kind, or
that's pretty staggering number, honestly.
Yeah, but the what stuck out to me about this article, because I'm like, okay, they're talking about something that got released a while ago that we even talked about last year. They actually went through news stories just in March throughout the country, and they have March 2nd, 3rd, 7th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. They have a huge list of news stories where somebody used a gun in self-defense, everywhere from New Mexico to Chicago to Michigan to Philadelphia to Utah, Miami. And it's about all these.
We need to link that into our Facebook page so these guys can see that data. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. And it talks about everything from somebody breaking into a car and the armed owner of the car stopping him to, this was kind of freaky. An armed intruder wearing a tactical vest with the word police emblazoned on it tried to confine a homeowner and his family to one room, but the homeowner pulled his firearm and shot the intruder, who fled.
Man.
And the intruder got caught and charged with false imprisonment and impersonating a public servant. So he'll be gone for a while. But
I hope so. That is super scary.
Yep. And then another one, this guy lived.
And, that makes me think of something. Sorry, I didn't mean to kind of
you're good.
detract. You do not have to open the door when they say, "Hey, it's the police, open the door." You don't have to open the door. You can try and procrastinate, open that door as long as possible. Say, "Hey, I'm just in the shower. Hold on," or whatever. I'm just getting out of the shower, and then you call dispatch and say, "Hey,
yep, I was going to say,
there's cops. There's somebody saying that there are cops at my door. Is it really the police?" Get information, because just like that instance, you don't know if that's somebody trying to break in. And I've heard rumors that that's becoming more and more popular for criminals to try and impersonate to get inside the home and do what they want to do, which is kind of scary.
Scary, man. Yeah. And I mean, because anybody can order a jacket or a vest or a hat that says police on it now. And
you can buy stupid badges online. I think we've even talked about the concealed carry badges you can buy online.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's stupid. But
yeah, but because of the technology now, law enforcement is all linked together. So if you call dispatch and ask them, say, "Hey, I live at this address and this is my name, and I just want to double check that police are knocking on my door, make sure it's really the police," and you can go from there.
I would highly recommend it.
Another one. And this was March 28th in Miami. A guy was at his house. A woman that he knew knocked on his door, and instead of a friendly reconnoitering, I guess, it was a guy who he'd never met armed with a rifle behind the woman, and they forced their way inside the home. They were going to rob him and his grandmother. And so he eventually got the rifle from the guy because the grandma hit the man with a brick.
Wow.
So it's so that woman and that guy face armed robbery, and the guy's quote was interesting. He goes, "I felt like if I was going to die right there, they would kill my grandmother and great grandmother."
So that's good.
Crazy, man. But yeah, there's let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's just from the month of March.
That's crazy.
So we'll link to that on the Facebook page.
And I'm sure all those bad guys with guns have registered their firearms and are following the law at the greatest extent.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, they've got their 4473s in order and everything.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So I thought that was interesting, though, that there was some news story evidence to kind of go along with that. So by the time you're listening to, we'll have this posted on the Facebook page at Range Minded Podcast. Just search facebook.com/Range Minded Podcast, and you'll find it.
That should be able to lead you right there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then you had some good news as well about the gun world.
Yeah, the other day I shared a post on my personal Facebook page, and I'll post it on the podcast Facebook, but just kind of going through some of the statistics and percentages of defensive gun use and people stopping bad guys in mass events. I'm not going to go through the whole article. There's a lot of information there, but there were a few pie charts and statistics on there that were kind of cool.
And the info's from the FBI too. So
yeah, so it's not like some independent. I mean, in the article they referenced John Lott, who, if you guys don't know who John Lott is, look him up. He's a, I don't know the best way to put it. He's incredibly smart when it comes to firearm statistics in a positive manner, shedding light on the truth about how guns are used in defensive use and stuff. He's pretty awesome. But it says percentage of events that took place in gun-free zones. This is what I thought was interesting. So what they did is they did the last 283 mass shootings in air quotes. So the percentage, what do you think the percentage that were in gun-free zones? Any guess?
All of them.
Might as well have been 38%. Well, nearly 38% happened in gun-free zones out of the 283. 21.5% were where people were permitted to carry firearms, so private property or whatever, places they could carry. And then there's still 40% of those are unknown, which I would probably venture to guess we're still more in the gun-free zone than not.
I'm surprised. How do you not know? You know what I mean?
You would think the police know when they write the report that, yeah, this is a gun-free zone. But apparently not.
Because it's usually either posted or it's a federal building or somewhere it says in the local or state laws where you can and can't carry.
And maybe they took place like in a national park, but where they're permitted. I don't know. Who knows? Events with 8 or more deaths. So there was 18 of those total out of those 283. Almost 78% of those were in gun-free zones where they had more than eight fatalities. So you tell me where gun-free zones save lives. They don't.
Yeah, seriously.
They don't.
Over 3/4 of those with 8 or more deaths, which I think, didn't we say that when we did the FBI episode about mass shootings, was it 5 or more?
Yeah. I think that's their definition is five. Maybe it's 4 or more.
Which, hey, we got to say one human life lost is
it's
obviously
tragic,
too many.
Right? We're not saying, well, that's acceptable. It's not acceptable, but it's also a way for them to kind of cook the books to qualify or quantify a mass shooting event.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy though. But I mean, the clearly the ones with more deaths happen in a gun-free zone. So
unfortunately, and then they had another pie chart. Scroll a little bit farther down about where these events took place, and over
like the places,
like
the
locations or types of areas.
Settings, I guess. Yeah,
setting would be a better way to put it. So out of those 283 events, one of them is in a movie theater. 72 were in places of business, like an office building or something. So that's if you're allowed to carry at work because that is the most likely place you're going to be attacked.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
It's a reality, I guess.
And even more than a school. So
yeah, by what, twice as much, I think?
Nearly twice as much. There's 14% of those recorded were in a school. 12% of those were at a bar or a club. 21 of those shootings, so 7% of those took place in people's homes. So
which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's scary. Stores like gas stations or grocery stores, 31 of those happened, 11% of those.
Yeah, and then open spaces were 12% as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. Houses of worship, which luckily that's pretty low, is 4.9. That's looks like the low. Oh no, restaurant was the lowest.
And then you pointed out about federal buildings as well.
Yes, 27 events out of those 283 were in federal building, almost 10%.
10%, and nobody, unless you're law enforcement or some kind of government employee, can carry in a federal building, right?
And that super pisses me off. So like, who was the major that shot up the military base a couple years ago?
Fort Hood.
Yeah. What was that guy's name?
I don't remember.
You know who I'm talking about? Well,
yeah,
he went on a shooting spree at a graduation or something, and even the MPs couldn't have firearms. Nobody had a fire. It's a military base. We train these people how to use firearms.
Wow.
but they were not allowed to carry. That is asinine.
That's crazy. And then to steal your thunder, on the very last infographic they have, did you see that?
Was that by state?
No, the number of events at which armed citizens injured or killed an innocent person.
Yeah. Sorry, that was
What was the number for that?
a big goose egg, 0.
Yeah.
So that's usually, the anti-gun people. Well, you're just going to kill more people. Well, we hear that for the constitutional carry thing for the 18-year-olds in Idaho. Well,
Right.
There's going to be more people getting shot. Well, according statistically, no. Concealed carry holders in incidents have never killed innocent life.
Yep, and that's from a 2018 FBI active shooter report.
So that's pretty awesome.
That's pretty interesting. So, I mean, take from that what you will, but it seems like, that the armed citizen helps more than hurts in almost every single case. They definitely don't hurt innocent civilians. So,
yeah, and this is a very lengthy report. There's lots of graphs and charts. That's why it'd be your best interest. Like I say, we'll share it to our Facebook page, and
yeah,
you'll be armed with information, as well as hopefully your carry gun.
Yeah, and the thing to remember is too that you always have to look at your sources, and this stuff is from the FBI. I mean, they don't have necessarily a political agenda or a dog in that fight. It's just they're reporting on crime.
And luckily, like it's not skewed. I mean, it's just the facts. So that part's nice. Where there's not a political group that's saying, well, whether it be the NRA or the anti-group or whatever, using that for their argument. It's just the facts.
Right. And the one from the Daily Signal, I guess, leans a little bit conservative, but, they do cite their sources with examples, and that's kind of what stuck out to me about it. So, take it with a grain of salt or take it with what you will. But, the anecdotal evidence, I guess, speaks for itself.
Yeah. Which is good with me. I mean, I'm totally cool with that. Yeah.
So, but that's what's going on in the world of current events so far.
And I'm sure there's so much more. Like, I'm sure there's always so much more. So,
but we're not talking about that today.
No, we're not.
And also, I'll say real quick that if you enjoy the current events section that we're going to start doing here, make sure you let us know. Email us at podcast@iishooting.com or let us know on Facebook or one way or the other. If you don't like it, let us know as well. But we just figure the more information you have, the better.
Yeah, we might just tell you to shut up. Who knows? I'm just kidding.
Well, if
I'm
Steve
just kidding.
If Steve talks to you, he'll let you know what he thinks.
I'm not scared to make enemies, but most of the time I just make friends. Most of the time.
Yeah, you're a nice guy.
It took you a minute.
Sure he is. It's because I know he's going to yell at me later if I don't agree with him.
I don't yell.
No, I've never actually heard you yell.
I'm a pretty placid guy unless I have to hurt somebody.
Right. So, but anyway, we're talking about homemade firearms.
Yes, we are.
And, we kind of talked about at the beginning a little bit that you can make your own homemade firearms. Perfectly legal at home. You can even buy stuff offline to make it happen too.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, just the other day, about a week ago, I helped a couple of buddies build some ARs.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't buy the components. They bought everything themselves. I just showed them how to put it together.
Yep. And that's kind of how I think most people get into building their own firearms nowadays. But I mean, back in the day, you almost had to make your own firearm if you were going to hunt or anything. Like I'm talking in like the 1700s.
Do you know what's interesting? Do you know where the term lock, stock, and barrel comes from?
I don't.
Oh, yes. I have some trivia for you.
Tell me.
That you might actually win a drink at this at a bar or something. So the term lock, stock, and barrel, back in the day, we're talking colonial times. So you would have one craftsman would make the lock, so the trigger and the hammer and the flash pan, that kind of thing.
The flintlock or whatever, yeah.
Correct. You'd have another craftsman that would build the barrel, and a third one would build the stock. So it'd be lock, stock, and barrel would be a one-stop place where there'd be one gunsmith that would make everything in-house.
And you can get everything right there.
Mm-hmm. Lock, stock, and barrel. That's why you hear everybody, that's what the term means now, right? You can buy lock, stock, and barrel. We have everything.
There you go. There's a little bit of trivia from Steve.
Hey, I'm smart.
There's a restaurant in downtown Boise, a steakhouse called Lock, Stock, and Barrel.
I've never been there.
It's actually pretty good. They got good salad, good steak. I think they've got seafood too. So
I don't care about salad, but steak matters.
But yeah, so you can, it kind of starts, I think, with people building their own ARs, and you can, obviously you have to. And it gets into the interesting part about firearms kind of regulations, because on an AR-15, the lower receiver is the only part that you need to take a background check and fill out a 4473.
Right.
The other part of an AR, from the stock to the muzzle device, you can get anywhere.
All that can be shipped right to your house. And it's important to understand that it's usually the lower part of the receiver, not necessarily just the AR, but the receiver. So like on a bolt action rifle, it would be the bolt and the place where the trigger attaches to it and the barrel attaches to it, that the receiver itself. On a handgun, it's usually the frame, unless you're talking about like the SIG 320, it's actually the trigger mechanism. So it's important to understand any serialized part is what's regulated. That's what's considered as the firearm, and you need to go to a dealer, or you should go to a dealer to purchase those.
Right.
You don't need to. I mean, there's guys that are selling receivers or whatever that they bought as investments. Private transfers is a different story, but the original purchase has to come from a dealer.
Right. Yeah. In order to get it one way or another, you have to go to a dealer.
Well, I guess let me clarify that too, because that sounds kind of, I'm sure I'm going to get fact checked on that. In order to take possession, you need to fill out a 4473, which if you bought online, it goes to your gun dealers. Then you fill out the paperwork there. Is that a better way to clarify it?
Yeah. I mean, just like buying any other firearm, you get it shipped. You can buy it online. You can get it shipped to your FFL, and then you fill out the 4473 there or whatever.
Right.
But I'm guessing most everybody knows about an AR-15 lower receiver if you're into firearms or not. But you can actually get what's called an 80% receiver, where it's not actually milled out all of the way.
Correct.
And from there, what you can do is you can buy some equipment that'll help you, cut the reliefs and the holes that you need to. But you don't need to take a background check or fill out a 4473 to take possession of any of that stuff.
It's not a complete part. And I'm personally not a huge fan of 80%ers. Like, I don't discourage people from buying them. That's not my deal. What you can expect when you buy an 80% is there's no milling for the trigger to go inside the trigger guard. Your pins aren't milled. I can't remember. I think that's it. Maybe there's the mag release you got to do, and some interior work where the trigger housing fits in there. To me, it's just more work than I want to deal with, and I'm not worried. I mean, the government's going to know that I have a gun anyways. There's so much going on
receipts or whatever.
Yeah, or Alexa might help people with Alexa. I'm sure.
Alexa, buy me a 80% lower receiver.
Yeah, that won't put you on the list at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, your safety selector, your trigger housing, none of that stuff's milled out. Your firing, your trigger pins aren't milled out. It's like I said, it's called an 80% because it's 80% done, but you have to do the rest. And
that's why I'm not a fan of it, because some of the placement, and I know you can buy jigs or whatever. In fact, there was a company, and maybe that's out there, but you could buy basically a miniature CNC that its only job was to mill out the rest of the way. That's it. That's the only function it would do. And maybe that is out on the market. I can't remember.
I'm sure it's still out there. Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not a huge fan. Those measurements have to be so precise in order for it to function reliably that I just buy a receiver. They're so cheap anyways, just to
well, and the other thing is the safety is my concern with it. If you're a machinist and you're kind of mechanically minded, you can probably get away with it. But the thing is, I mean, yeah, you have to drill those pins precisely. You have to drill out the trigger housing pretty precisely.
Yeah.
And you can mess stuff up pretty easily if you're not doing it the right way. I mean, I've seen people do it online with like routers, and you're supposed to use like a drill press or a CNC machine, like you said. But
yeah,
I mean,
some kind of a mill. Yeah,
most
it's
people
just
don't
so
have
much
that kind of
work.
stuff. Yeah,
and if you've bought one expecting to take it to Jeff or Cody, they will not work on it in the store.
Yeah, that's a liability.
It's a huge liability for us at the store because we could be, it could be construed that we're making unserialized parts, and it's not worth it. So we won't work on them at the store, and we don't sell them at the store either. It's not worth the hassle.
Yeah, and like I said, if you want to go that route, more power to you. Just know what you're getting into. But there's usually no roll marks. There's no serial numbers or anything on it. You don't have to fill out a 4473 to do it.
Yeah,
and they do sell jigs, where you just kind of follow along. But I mean, I can only imagine the amount of ways that you could screw that up. And then you have an AR that may not be reliable at best, or maybe unsafe at worst, and it could blow up in your hand.
It could be a grenade. Yeah, it's not worth it to me. Polymer 80s too for like Glocks. And I don't know if they make them for any other platform, but you can buy the Polymer 80 frames, which I've actually thought about buying one of those just because I enjoy building handguns. And they seem to run pretty well. But same thing, it's 80%. You got to do all the work to get it to where it's a usable part.
Yeah, and I'd say maybe that's a little bit different than an AR, an 80% AR receiver, because one, you're dealing with handgun rounds as opposed to rifle rounds, so the ballistics are going to be a little different. Pressure's
pressure. I've seen guns blow up, handguns blow up in people's hands, and it's a mess too.
True. But Polymer 80 is another thing that you don't even need to fill out a 4473 for. With that, you get the frame, and then they kind of have a kit to tell you where to basically Dremel tool everything out.
Yeah, it comes with the jig, and the jig usually gets destroyed in the production of the completing of the frame. So you just throw that away. I guess you could reuse it if you're careful, but most of the time it gets damaged while you build the gun. So
yeah, but you can buy it a Polymer 80 build kit off of I have it on Midway USA up right here. And you can build it right at home, which, if you're inclined to do that, I will say it is a really, really good way to learn about how firearms work and how everything fits together.
Yeah, I think you could look at a positive way that way. Yeah.
When I first got into AR-15s, I bought a lower, from my FFL, but I learned how all of that stuff fit together from there, And that was kind of how I learned and taught myself how firearms work and how everything kind of fits together. Handgun might be a little bit different because there's just a lot of smaller parts that have to fit into such a small area.
And I don't know. I guess because I've built and modified a few of my own handguns, it's not as daunting. I think in a way I was going to say it's easier than building an AR, but building an AR is pretty damn easy.
Yeah, it's more assembling than anything else. But
yeah.
The other thing I would say is if you maybe are a Glock guy or something, because right now Polymer 80 only makes Glock style frame kits. I don't think anybody else is really on the market trying to make any other kind of frame or anything like that. And I can understand why they went with Glock, because there's so many aftermarket parts and all that. So if you're a Glock guy and you want to maybe make your own 80% Glock, you could put whatever slide and trigger components and anything else you want in there. It might be a more affordable option than, buying just a Glock 17 or 19 off the shelf and then replacing half the parts.
Yeah. It's, and it's yours, right? It's your gun. You can say, yeah, I built this from the ground up. Now, it's not like you can expect to just like buy it and just throw it together. There may be a little bit more fitting involved, and that can be overwhelming at times. Like the 1911 that honestly I'm still not done with. Everything's fit. Like it's still in the shop over there. I just got to Cerakote the last few parts and it'll be ready to fire. But I need to share a picture of that. I don't know if I've ever shared that 1911 on the Facebook page, but
no, I don't think you have.
It was a lot of work. Now, fitting a 1911 is totally different than fitting a polymer gun, but it was a lot of work and a lot of time. And I know we've talked about it on the podcast before, but it also was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, if you're mechanically minded and you want to learn about this stuff and you have the time and the patience to make the fitment work and to put all the parts together, I just would maybe say it's not, if it's going to be your first firearm, I wouldn't go that route.
I wouldn't go that way. It would be, in fact, it may even turn you off to firearms if it's your first.
Yeah, it could.
But it is fun once you get your confidence build up and you make a few connections with people that have done it before. It could be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. And then, the other thing to remember too is it's, there's no serial numbers or anything like that. So people like to call them ghost guns or whatever. I don't think that does us any good to call them ghost guns, because it probably just scares the general population a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, that, making sure, like, it's totally cool to build a gun, but make sure that you're using the correct nomenclature.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't even say the word.
Well, and the other caveat there is make sure that you're building a firearm that complies with ATF regulations, because you could build an AR, and if you don't know what you're doing, you could build a short-barreled rifle. And you're going to have a bad day if somebody finds that out.
Let me pull up the ATF's, their little paragraph on a frequently asked question was, does an individual need a license to make a firearm for personal use? And the ATF's response is no, a license is not required to make a firearm solely for personal use. However, a license is required to manufacture firearms for sale or distribution. So if you think you're going to make a gun and sell it, build another one and sell it, you're probably breaking federal law, unless you have an FFL. The law prohibits a person from assembling a non-sporting semi-automatic rifle or shotgun from 10 or more imported parts. Now that goes under ITAR. That was a few years ago. I can't remember if it was Clinton. I can't remember when ITAR was enacted, but there are certain countries that we do not do business with, and you're not allowed to import parts, like from Russia and places like that.
Right.
As well as firearms that cannot be detected by metal detectors or X-ray machines. So you can't make carbon fiber or something like that can't be detected.
A porcelain gun.
Yeah, like remember that big thing in the 80s, a porcelain firearm.
Yeah.
The making of an NFA firearm requires a tax payment. So short-barreled rifles, integrally suppressed, that kind of thing. It doesn't matter if you make it. Now, Idaho has in their constitution that we can build suppressors as long as they're made with parts from Idaho, inside state bounds, and stamped made in Idaho. I would not test that personally, because
because the
ATF just said NFA requires payment of tax. So I'm not going to be the guinea pig on that law.
Yeah, well, and I mean, there are, state laws, but also you're technically violating a federal law. So it's kind of, and we're not going to get into the whole state.
I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, no way.
I'm not good at giving legal advice, but my suggestion would be to not test that law.
Yeah, you probably don't want to do that. But yeah, like, so if you want to make sure you know what you're building, know what you're doing, and that it complies with NFA rules, because you build an AOW or an SBR or an
SBS,
or a destructive device or something, you could be up a creek real fast.
Yeah, don't be making pipe bombs. That's a destructive device. You're going to go to prison. But it's important to understand, like, what is an SBR, short-barreled rifle. Okay, so anything. If the barrel length is 16 inches, you're good. If your barrel length is 14 inches and you have a 2-inch muzzle device that's permanently attached, you're good. It has to be 16 inches at the greatest length, if as long as everything is permanently attached to make it there.
Right.
Okay.
If it has a stock.
If it has a stock, correct. So you can go to a pistol, which has a brace, which I don't know why you would mess around dealing with tax stamps when you can make a pistol. But the thing with that is, and I've talked to people quite a lot, actually. Customers come in and I want to get this grip, and then I want to do this foregrip, and if it's more than a 45-degree angle, it's an SBR, even if you have the pistol brace on it. So no vertical grips on your pistols or their SBRs, no matter what.
Right. And then there's some people say, and I don't know if this is true or not, but if the overall length is, I think, more than 26 inches, it qualifies as a firearm, just a general term firearm, and you can have a vertical grip on it, but wouldn't want to chance it. Wouldn't want to be the guinea pig on that one, like you said.
And that's kind of how, what's that shotgun? The Shockwave. That's kind of how the Shockwave. That's how the Shockwave kind of got through it all, is because they're 26 and 3/8 end to end, and so they meet that requirement that it's a firearm, not a shotgun,
right?
Or an SBS, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so if you want to build a short barreled shotgun, then that's fine. You can go through the tax, the Form 1 or whatever you can fill out. But that barrel, if you want to be within the law and not deal with that stuff, you have to be 18 inches. Shorter than 18 inches, which that's pretty easy to measure. You lock the action close, you put a wooden dowel down in there, you mark where the barrel, meets that stick, pull it out and measure it. If you're 18 inches or longer, you're good. Yep.
And that's why even if you look at most, off the shelf shotguns, most of their barrels are usually 18 and a half inches, just so there's no confusion.
Yep.
So even the manufacturers they don't mess around with that stuff.
And that's kind of where, the Ruby Ridge guy up here in Idaho got hosed. We won't go into the whole story about my opinion on that. But anyway, he cut a shotgun barrel down, and it was like 17 and 7/8 or something. He was encouraged to cut it down because it would have been, for somebody else. And so that threw him into a federal lawsuit. So pay attention, look up the regs. Actually, the ATF's website is super informative, and it's easy to use, thankfully, unlike the agency itself. Yeah, unlike the agency itself, it's easy to understand. So just spend a few minutes and jump on some blogs, jump on YouTube, look at some videos. It's really not difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there that you can learn from. And if you're really adventurous, you can build your own AK even as well.
That's a little bit more in depth.
That's involved.
You got to find somebody that has a 20-ton press to press that barrel into the action.
Yeah, and you need a press to bend the receiver bend the receiver together, because it's all just sheet metal.
Yeah.
It was funny because actually, of all places, I'm on Mother Jones, talking about this guy who went to an AK build party.
Oh man, I want to get invited.
Yeah, right. So, it's possible, but it was just funny. And of course, Mother Jones is using it to say that people can have, untraceable military style semi-automatic rifles and blah, blah, blah. And that's something that we should note too, is that if you're a prohibited person and you're not allowed to own a firearm and you build a firearm, you're still going to go to jail.
I was going to bring that up too. And this is super important to understand. If you are 18 or under 21, you cannot buy a receiver, a lower receiver, any kind of action, because that is considered a handgun. It is the same class as a handgun. So you cannot buy a receiver.
Very important to note. Yeah. And, just like I said, if you're a prohibited person of any kind, maybe you're a felon or anything else, anything that would disqualify you on a 4473, if you own a firearm, even if you make it yourself, that's illegal.
Yeah, that is important to understand. And I think some people try to use that as a workaround. Well, I'll just build it myself. Well, you're still prohibited.
Yeah, and you're taking some pretty heavy chances there.
Yeah, prison doesn't sound fun to me.
No, not at all. And because we're not criminals.
That's true. Well, I get to get a free education, I guess.
In some way, shape, or form, yeah. So the other way, and this has only been a couple of years, and it's funny you brought up ITAR because that comes into play with this story. But if you've ever heard of Defense Distributed, you can theoretically build a firearm with a 3D printer out of plastic, all polymer.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's funny about that, Kay? I think we actually talked about him before.
We did.
is that information is available online. For whatever reason, that gentleman pissed off the wrong people because he was not the only one just distributing that information.
Right. So his name is Cody Wilson. He started Defense
Cody
Distributed.
Wilson. I couldn't remember his name.
And he's a little bit of an oddball, and I'm pretty sure he's arrested now because he was messing around with underage girls in Asia or something. I can't remember, but it wasn't.
Which I find that kind of interesting too, but because the timing was suspicious, I should say.
Convenient, anyway, I guess you could say.
Nonetheless.
Yeah, we talked about that, but he's kind of an oddball, so it wouldn't surprise. He seems like he kind of thinks he's above the law anyway. So
yeah, I think he kind of likes the attention.
Yeah. So, but what's funny, you mentioned about ITAR, is the International Trade in Arms Regulations. And what this guy did basically was he made a 3D printable pistol. It's a single shot,
the Liberator.
22 caliber. Yep. Single shot, 22 caliber pistol called the Liberator. And then he posted that file online. So where you could take that and plug it into a 3D printer and it would make the same thing, which, theoretically is totally legal.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, it's not just an ATF or that's also under freedom of information. He had he was breaking no laws. Let's put it that way.
Right. And it kind of blurs the First and the Second Amendments together. I should say a little bit.
Yeah, not the First Amendment. Yeah. Sorry, not the freedom of information. We're not getting information from the government. But you're
freedom of speech, though.
Yeah, freedom of speech. Yep, correct.
But I guess when the law came up and kind of knocked on his door and said, you're in violation of ITAR because anybody around the world can download these files to make firearms, and that means you're exporting firearms out of the country.
No, which is silly because you know what you can do? I can jump on Amazon and I can buy like books to talk about, all the specs are available online in hardcover. I can buy that stuff. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But, why not?
So, but he also, I think, eventually had ended up with a repository of AR-15 lower receiver files, all that kind of stuff. You can get Glock, I think, frame. You could get Glock frame, files to print all this stuff off on 3D printers. Eventually, the technology is going to catch up where the polymer that you use in a 3D printer is just as strong, if not stronger, than anything else that a firearm owner would use. And I'm pretty sure they have metal 3D printers now where they're coming out with them.
Yeah, yep. You can buy powdered. It comes in a powder form and it creates metal. It's kind of amazing, but.
Yeah, so the future is kind of happening before our eyes, and it's going to give way one way or the other. And Cody Wilson was quoted in saying is that technology supersedes the law.
Yeah,
so
that's
don't know.
True.
I mean, the law is gonna have to catch up with the technology at some point. It's just like when the internet first came out and everybody was downloading music illegally.
What? That was illegal?
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. You better close down your Napster, Steve. You're about 10 years behind, 20 years behind it.
No wonder why I couldn't get it to work anymore.
Yeah, but, I guess the Department of Justice settled with him, but this is back in like 2015. And so obviously it's been a couple years since then, and he's been having some issues. If you go to his website, I think it's DefCAD. I think that's the website. Yeah. His is defdist.org. And there's still some lawsuits going on about freedom of speech and being able to post these files to print these firearms and stuff.
Which again, he is not the only one that's made those files available. So I don't know what he did to make somebody angry, but he did good at it.
Yeah, and if you go to DefCAD as well, which is like CAD, like computer assisted drawing, I think they're drafting. Mm-hmm. They had a whole repository of AK, AR, all that kind of stuff. And I think eventually what they ended up doing was, like you said, going on Amazon and printing a hardcover book or something with the code in it, so you can type it in yourself.
Why not?
But I think
that should not be restricted. I can understand some of the other countries having a fit, but you know what? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and you can. I think you can geographically restrict websites or something. If you're from a certain country or whatever.
Wouldn't that be geofencing? Wouldn't that be the same thing?
Yeah, something like that. And obviously, I mean, there are ways around that too, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily legal.
Well, and the dark web, if you have access to the dark, it doesn't matter. That information will always be out.
Well, and that's the crazy thing. If you really want to go out and try to find these files for to 3D print firearms, they're out there. I mean, once something is out there online, it's never going to come back. It's like Pandora's box. Yeah. You just have to know kind of where to go to find them. Ask
some of those politicians that wish that stuff never got online.
Stuff went away, like text messages or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something important to understand too. Whatever you write down on Facebook or social media or whatever, that never goes away.
Yeah. And actually, I will say, if you go to Defense Distributed, you can, they have some other, they don't necessarily have the files, I think, now, but they do have the hardware that you can use. Like, for example, they have, you were talking about a CNC machine or, a CNC mill that is basically built to...
dedicated for that purpose.
Yeah. So this one, it's called the Ghost Gunner, and it is... It's coded to finish 80% lowers for AR-15, AR-308, and the M1911.
Nice.
So you could actually, but I mean, then again, it's a polymer 1911.
Which I don't know. I guess that's fine. I don't know if that's necessarily my choice, but whatevs.
But the crazy thing is, do you know? Guess how much it costs?
I don't know. Actually, it's probably around what, $300?
$250, I think.
Hey, pretty good guess.
For the deposit. I don't know how much actually it is.
That's not for the...
Oh, I'm sorry. It's $2,000.
Oh, I was way off.
Small print there. Yeah, it's a $250 deposit, and then they're making them in batches. And so then you only have to pay another $1,750 to get it. But yeah, if you really want to get into that stuff, you can make that stuff at home.
That's right.
Yeah, just know what you're getting into. I mean, I think that's pretty much it.
If you have any questions, like obviously you can, if you're in the Boise area, you can come check us out at the store, or you can spend some time talking to Cody and Jeff if Jeff's available. Sometimes they get busy back there in their little cave and they just don't want to talk to people. They want to get work done. But for the most part, any of our other employees, I would say a lot of them have spent some time at least building their own ARs. A couple of us have built our own handguns. So yeah, there should be some knowledge available. And there's always stuff on the internet. Just be careful make sure it's a reputable website or YouTube channel.
Yeah, and make sure that you're following the laws of your state and of the NFA and all that kind of stuff, because you can get yourself into trouble real fast if you don't know what you're doing.
And ignorance is no excuse.
No, but I will say, building your own firearms, I think, is a great way to exercise your Second Amendment rights. Mm-hmm. Because it's spelled out that you can legally do that.
I need to build some more because I keep losing them in boating accidents.
Yeah. So maybe you can get into 80%, and then I heard those float a lot easier.
Do they?
If they're polymer, maybe. So, check it out. Look into it. If you want to do it, come by the shop and ask us. We can or help you out, or maybe at least point you in the right direction. But we are not going to finish those 80% for you. If something, maybe you are interested in building, your own firearms, but you want to start with 100% completed receiver, we do have AR build classes.
Yes, we do.
We've had 1911 build classes back in the day. I don't know if those are still going on or not. I don't think that.
No, we had so much trouble with those. We'd source parts from a few different animals, and it just was more work than it ended up being. It was worth. I was the guinea pig. That's where my 1911 was born. And mine worked out well. We did 2 different classes, maybe 3 different classes, and we just had so much trouble. We decided to put that in the maybe later pile. Yeah,
but if that's something you're interested in, make sure you send the shop a message or send us a message, and we can relay that along to you. But if there's all kinds of YouTube videos, if you want to do a polymer 80 or like a handgun or an AR-15, that's how I learned how to build an AR, was putting all the lower components together, was an animated video from CMMG, believe it or not.
Nice.
They have a great video that shows you what pieces you need. And actually, that'd be a great way to get started, is to buy a lower, either from us, obviously, at the shop, or if you're not maybe near.
We would prefer that, right?
Right. That would be our favorite way. But if you're not, near the shop, or you need to buy it online, or I tell you what, buy a lower from us and then buy a lower parts kit from CMMG, and it comes in different colored bags. And there's an animated video.
Nice. There are, and I guess we could talk about that real quick. There are so many parts out there. If we're talking specifically AR, there's just so many parts available, and there are some that fit together better than others. But
yeah, in terms of
the CMMG kit that you were talking about, I do like that a lot because of the color coded bag. So you only open one bag at a time.
Right. And then you just spill out all the contents, and then they actually have a video, an animated video that shows you, highlights what parts you need, where they go. And that was like the best way for me to learn.
Yeah, it's awesome. I actually I'd shared another post here a while ago. I'm looking for something else I know we've touched on this. I'm just talking about parts and how available they can be, at least in Idaho. I'm gonna find it. There was maybe it was Channel 7 in Boise had a report that Idaho has one of the greatest concentration of gun related jobs or something like that. So of course it does. We're Idaho and we're awesome. We have so many different manufacturers, and I mean we have Seekins. Like Seekins makes fantastic AR parts. And then you have Odin, which is just down the street from the shop, kind of sort of roundabout way. They make great parts. In fact, they have fantastic barrels. If you're wanting to get into like they have a Grendel barrel that is probably one of the best on the market, and they came out with some stuff at SHOT Show, which I posted a video of. Great company.
They make great parts.
There's so many things available that are made here in Idaho, and they're sold nationally, obviously. But hey, don't be scared to venture out and find some good stuff and make an all Idaho gun. Yeah,
which is totally easy to do. And if you, like Steve said, if you needed to pop in somewhere, you can actually talk to some people and get some advice and tell them what you're trying to do, and they can point you in the right direction too. Because kind of hard to talk to a YouTube video.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I think we would suggest starting too, is get into ARs. If maybe you're not mechanically minded and you don't want to mess around with this stuff at home. I mean, I'll be honest. My first AR I built without a vise. I built without a real armorer's wrench. Like it was like bottom of the barrel, I still have it. I mean, I've upgraded it since then, but if I had known there was an AR build class to go to, that would have been the best thing, because you get not only all the tools you need right in front of you, but you get, people who have done it before, and people with the knowledge and experience to make that happen. Like Steve,
some tricks and stuff to, sometimes there are some, I call them swear word moments when you're building an AR that can be really frustrating. So there's some tricks and stuff that you learn from other people that have done a few of them. So that's always good to know.
And the cool thing is, I firmly believe that once you learn how to do it once, you will never forget how to do it. I've built 3 or 4 ARs, I think now. And I watched the video on the first 2, and then the last 2 was like, oh, yeah, I know how to do this. And you can do it in like 15 minutes if you really know kind of where everything goes and don't screw it up.
That's right.
Because, there are a couple of oh darn moments. So,
you launch detents and springs, and then you can't find them, and then it's a bad afternoon.
Or you drop them, and then sometimes you have to figure out where your third hand went. So, but we definitely encourage, check out, learn how to build your own firearms at home. Use reputable parts, do your research, follow all the rules. But like I said, a great way to exercise your Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, and if you have any questions about that, you can obviously send them our way as well, and we can find out the right answer for you. So just search for us on Instagram or Facebook, just Range Minded Podcast, or email us podcast@iishooting.com, or come stop by the shop.
Yep, and don't be scared to message me if I don't get over there as much as I want to anymore, and I'm not in the store as much as I want to. So if you want to chat with me about some of the stuff, whatever too. I mean, don't be scared to message me. But yeah, feel free to check us out at the store. And if you haven't been there, you need to go there anyways. Like, shame on you for not showing up if you haven't.
Yeah, book your flight to Boise and check out Independence Indoor Shooting. Just make sure you put your gun in your checked bag.
Yes, don't be dumb. If you're flying out of Atlanta, make sure that you put the gun in the right place.
Yeah, don't forget that you have it in your backpack. So, but that'll do it for now, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. Hey,
if you like what you're hearing, share it around. Let us know how we're doing. If you want to hear specific things, don't be scared to say, hey, I want to hear more about this or that or whatever.
Yep, let us know. We'll be here.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.